Good morning. Today is Thursday, October 8th, and welcome to the weekly Sociality Squared Director's Cut, where I go over commentary about what we do here at Sociality Squared and share other social media marketing news and trends. So today's main topic is accessibility. Because diversity is used a lot in this day and age, needed, and I support that 100%. But often disability is not included. So here at Sociality Squared, we're big believers that diversity includes disability. So today I'll be talking about some tips on how to be more accessible in your social media marketing and for your website too. So stay tuned. We're still in the middle of a pandemic, so my heart is with your heart, and especially with the Black community right now. And here at Sociality Squared, we don't want business to return back to normal. We want to create a better standard, one rooted in anti-racism and radical inclusion and equality. And if you don't know who I am, I'm Helen Todd, the co-founder and CEO of Sociality Squared. At Sociality Squared, we understand the magic of people coming together around what they value and love. And clients partner with us to grow their businesses and know that we always remember behind every screen is a person. So today, some news, the main topic on accessibility and inspiration. So on the news front, vote. Early voting has started in a lot of places. If you're in a state that still can register and you haven't registered, do register. But that is one thing I will be saying between now and the election, which is already taking place. So vote, register to vote, have a plan to vote, and get out and vote. Encourage other people to vote. It's so important. Okay, and then Sociality Squared news. Actually, this afternoon at Brandemonium, it's a fourth year branding conference here in Cincinnati. This year it's virtual due to COVID. I'll be speaking later today at 11:45 a.m. to 12:15 on the future of voice in marketing. They're making it super accessible this year in the terms of the cost. So it's only $10. So if you could make it, do. And then let's see, we have a couple, the company will be closed a few upcoming days. Monday is a holiday, and then we'll also be closed on November 3rd for the election. And if you're in a leadership position, I encourage you to do the same or give people time off for them to vote. And then also I've kind of been promoting South by Southwest. It's open for proposals for their virtual event between now and October 16th. So if you have a great idea, do submit it. And then of course, if you haven't liked this page, please do, and you'll get notified when I go live every Thursday morning at 8 a.m. and sign up for our monthly newsletter, which is a recap of all the stuff that we do with the latest S2 news and social media marketing trends as well. Okay, so for the key topic of accessibility, I wanted to share this with you because I'm talking about it a little bit later today as part of my voice presentation, because voice actually is the voice tech is a really great, inclusive, and accessible technology, which will really be the interface of tech in the future. So in preparation for that, I thought it would be a nice time to take the opportunity to spend some time on this broadcast to talk about accessibility specifically to social media marketing. And in just pulling some notes together for this, Stella Young, who I 100% absolutely recommend you watching her TED Talk, which I'll link to. She coined the phrase disability porn. And one of the things that she said that I hear over and over again is disability doesn't make you exceptional. She wants to live in a world where it's the norm. And that's something that, I think we could all kind of internalize and help normalize. And you know, a lot of brands, we talk about purpose and core values, and oftentimes it does include diversity, inclusion, and accessibility, which is great. But we want to go beyond principle and put it into practice. And not only is it, you know, a great principle and should be in practice, it just makes economic sense as well. In the US, 1 in 4 people have a disability according to the CDC. And just a few other stats for you. 8.1 million Americans, which is 3.3%, have a vision impairment. And this means that they may rely on a screen magnifier or screen reader, or might have some form of color blindness. And then 7.6 million, which both of these is a little over 3%, have a hearing impairment, so they might rely on transcripts or captions for audio and video media. So from a pure marketing sense, your audience probably has a disability if 1 in 4 Americans have a disability. So you want to include them in your marketing efforts. And then also from a legal sense, it's illegal not to have a website that's not accessible. And this is a sore point for me because it is not like a baseline standard for web developers to include or just like code their websites to be accessible. Which it's 2020, it should not be an add-on, the client shouldn't be able to request it, it should just be standard. This is something with Sociality Squared's website, we redid it a few years ago now, and it's a pain point, but I was like, I want it accessible. The agency we use, they're fabulous, the website looks great. Didn't have anyone in staff who knew how to design or code an accessible website. And the resources we had weren't that helpful, if I'm very honest. And then after the fact, I found a guy who is fantastic, Mark Green. I highly recommend him if you need any accessibility consulting. And his first question was, so when are you going to redo the website? So I have a pain point with website developers, because even if you want accessibility, it's kind of like a hunt to find talent that can do it. And then you have to request it. It's not just like standard. So if you're watching this and if you're a web developer, please make accessibility baseline standard. If you're a mobile app developer, please make it baseline standard. So anyway, our site has been optimized a little bit for accessibility, but it has more to go, in full disclosure, on that front. So anyway, that was a little bit of a rant. Okay, so how do we put taking accessibility and from principle and putting it into action? So one of the first things that you can do if you're like, I have no idea if my website is accessible, there are tools that you can punch in the website and check. And the one, and I'll share the links to all of these, is like wave.webaim.org, where it will kind of point out the different aspects of your website that can be improved. And if you don't know what a screen reader is, this is something that we actually have had visually impaired people on S2's team, one fully blind, so we learned a lot in working with her. And if you're not familiar with it, what it is if you can't see the screen in front of you, there's technology that will actually read everything from the links that can be clicked to the copy that's there to the person, and they navigate the website, using short code or your keyboard, and being able to know where the buttons are that are clicked. So if the website is coded in a way where, sign up for a newsletter or click here, if that's not coded for a screen reader to say, this is a button, click here, and what the object is and the action is, then you're going to miss people being able to fully interact with your website. So that's one thing, that people literally listen to the web and how they interact with it. And in terms of companies that have really pushed accessibility to the forefront, like Apple gets a ton of credit for that and what they've done with the iPhone. So that's kind of a great baseline standard that they've done, but there's certainly a lot more that can be done. So, there's some things that you can do for your website, and there's other things that you need, a webmaster or developer to help with. One of the things too is color contrast, and this is something where you want to make sure that the text color, the font color, and the background have a strong enough contrast where anyone can read it. Like if you put light gray on a yellow background, like, geez, fully visual people, anyone would have a hard time seeing that. So that's another thing that's easy for most people to fix, is the color contrast. And there's tools where you can triple check that too, to make sure that just the color contrasts are as accessible as possible. For social media, so some of the different platforms have added tools that so social media is a very visual space. We all know this. It's especially Instagram, it's like image first. So if you're visually impaired, you rely heavily on the descriptions, and your screen readers will read the alt text in the images. And some of the platforms like Instagram have actually started using AI technology to figure out what's in the images and do auto photo descriptions, which is great. From a brand standpoint, you shouldn't rely 100% fully on the platforms doing all the work of reading the images. A best practice is to put alt text or image descriptions for every photo. So if I can't see the photo, I can read what's in the photo, whether that's Helen on stage at Brandemonium in 2019. Very simple, just to let people know who might not be able to see the image, know what's in it. And you can do that in alt text, which most of the platforms have, image descriptions, or a best practice that's recommended is to actually put it in the description of the, I'm not saying that right, in the main description of what the post is, in the main copy area. And then another thing too, which I think is really relevant for this day and age, is a lot of people do screen grabs or like screenshots and tweet those or share those. And right now, one thing that is really popular on Instagram are carousels with tips, where people scroll through and get tips on how to vote, what the plans are and stuff, which are fantastic from an algorithm standpoint. I recommend everyone testing carousels because it's more time spent, and that's a signal that goes to Instagram for the algorithm, yada 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 on that front. But if your main post is text heavy and all the text lives in an image, that's not accessible. So what I recommend, whether it's a quote, how-to tips, screen grab, whatever copy is put into the images, duplicate that and replicate it in the description area, the post area itself too. You've already written the copy, it's all in the graphics, so take the time to do it. And it might seem duplicative, but not only is it accessible, but it also helps on some platforms with search in terms of putting what's in the images in the description. So I think that's like one big takeaway for all social media marketers who are watching this, is copy and images should go in the description areas as well. And then another big one for social media marketing is video. This is more for hearing impaired, but it's also just a trend because so many people watch video with the sound off too, is that you want to use subtitles or closed captions so that if people are watching the video with the sound off, that they still understand what's happening. And one thing, how we think about video in general, because it's a trend that, people in the Instagram feed will be scrolling with the sound off, and then we'll tap to turn the sound on. I think the current in stories, people do keep the sound on in stories for those without hearing. Anyway, so a best practice is use subtitles or closed captions. So if the sound is turned off, that anyone can understand what's happening. So that's another best tip or best practice. And then the other thing is with hashtags, which if you missed last week's broadcast, please go back and watch it. I discussed hashtags as the main topic. And I did mention this, but I should have. You need to use capitalization for the beginning of each word in the hashtag. So if it's, we'll do hashtag like this, it shouldn't be in all caps and it shouldn't be in all lowercase. The L and the T should be capitalized. And that's, screen readers can read hashtags with that type of capitalization, which I read somewhere what it's called, camel cap or something. If not, it's just screen readers can't read it and scoopily gook. But also for people reading it, it actually helps visually be able to understand where the words end. And there's a couple of funny examples of if you don't look at how hashtags can be misconstrued if they're written wrong too. So, and then also use emojis sparingly. Screen readers can read emojis. There's a heart, it will read heart. But if posts are heart, 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 fire, 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 today is an exciting day, heart, 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 fire, fire, fire emoji. That's how screen readers read it. And it's not the best experience. So, we're a big fan of emojis in, for our brands, depending on the brand guides that we put together and the amount of emoji use, if at all makes sense for the brands, we do use them. But we also have to keep in mind that while they are fun and add, a fun element and visual element to the posts, that we don't want to overdo them by any means. And then something else that I also wanted to mention as part of this is it's been really good to see, as content creators, the content that we produce does make an impact. We know this because brands spend a ton of money on advertising to get us to impact our behavior and what we purchase and buy. The content that we consume impacts, our thinking and all of this stuff. And we can be, as much as we want to be inclusive in terms of the skin colors and the spectrum of gender identities, we also want to include able-bodied, that's the wrong word, disabled and non-disabled people in our images and photography as well. And stock photography sites are starting to add more disabled photography in their collections, which is great. And I encourage everyone on this call to include that, with the caveat that we want to avoid creating inspiration porn. And I'm going to link to Stella Young's TED Talk and a few links on this after the video is posted. But it's a really important point to make, in that the term came from, and she coined it at this TED Talk, of if you are objectifying someone for the benefit of someone else. She used the term porn really intentionally, and how that happens with the disabled community is if you only look at a disabled person as a source for information for a non-disabled person. So if you see her in a wheelchair and think like, oh, her life is so hard as a non-disabled person, I should feel grateful for my life. That's actually a little bit guilty of inspiration porn. And she lists a couple of examples in her TED Talk, but if you have like a child with a disability doing an everyday task like playing a sport, and then you have an inspiration quote like, don't give up, try, that's also inspiration porn. So we want to normalize it, and kind of back to the quote that I opened with, that she said that it's not exceptional to have a disability. And she said she wants to live in a world where disability isn't the exception, it's the norm. And as content creators, we can help normalize it, and how we present it and the context in which we present disabled people in our content, makes a difference. So we can help contribute to that normalization. So I'll share a couple other links to, if you're curious about that and are thinking like, oh man, have I done this before? How can I, improve? I'll give you some resources in this video. And then for the last little bit, for my inspiration, I wanted to do a shout out to Haben Girma. She is the first deafblind student to go through Harvard Law School. I have her book. I have a confession. I have not read it yet. I have a tall stack of books to read, but this is on that stack to read this year. She is an absolute rock star and is an advocate for the disability community. I've seen her speak a few different times, first at Summit at Sea. She's been at South by Southwest. She's met President Obama. She's a huge disability advocate. And she also spoke at the No Band, No Rally, which I helped organize, or one of them that I helped organize in New York City. She's also a first-generation African-American with Ethiopian and Eritrean descent, so she brings a very intersectional approach to her work too. So I highly encourage you to follow her on social media. I've learned a lot from her, and just also staying up to date on the ADA and news that's happening in the just to stay up to date on what's happening. And then one of the things that she had said in one of her talks that kind of resonated with me, she kind of she used Helen Keller as the example in this, but she really points out how oftentimes it's not the disabled person that has limitations on what they can do or dreams of what they can become. It's society's limitations that are put on them. And I think that's something that I keep in mind a lot of, checking myself if those thoughts come across. So I'm going to read a few quotes from her that just resonated with me in terms of, whether it's, any of the inclusion things, who is putting the limitations or the barriers, whether it's women in general or disabilities of what we can and can't do. So one of Haben's quotes, "Disability never holds anyone back. All the barriers that exist are created by society, and it's up to all of us to work together to dismantle those barriers." And then with Helen Keller, this is one of her quotes from one of the speeches, a commencement speech that she did. Not all communities are inclusive. Harvard excluded Helen. Back then, Harvard was only for men. Helen's disability, this is Helen Keller, didn't hold her back. Her gender didn't hold her back. It was the community of Harvard that chose to exclude women. All barriers are created by people. So as you go through today, I hope that's a little seed of just making awareness of what barriers exist. What ones do you put on yourself? Maybe just mentally of what you think you can and can't do. What barriers has society put on you and other individuals, and how, as a social media marketer and content creator, how can we help break down those barriers and help normalize the disabled community? So that's what I've got for you today. And again, if you can join my talk later, please do. And let's see. Yeah, and my little outro, do like the page if you haven't already, and again, sign up for our newsletter. So I appreciate you watching, especially if you watched all 30 minutes. And I will be back next Thursday at 8 a.m. again, East Coast time, on the Sociality Squared page. Thanks.